Though Game of Thrones ended on a sour note for most, it was undeniably one of the most popular television series in history at its peak. George R.R. Martin's slow-yet-masterful guiding hand laid the groundwork for a promising adaptation. Brimming with his signature gray morality, meaningful dialogue, and scenes sensual, action-packed, and dramatic all. Yet some aspects of the show, from characters to plot points to settings, stood out far more than others. Though it cannot truly be called a masterpiece, Game of Thrones contains plenty of moments that stay in one's memory long after the bittersweet taste of the show itself has faded. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Exploring Fiction. In today's video, I want to express my personal top 5 favorite Game of Thrones moments. There are no official criteria, such as meaning to the story, technical prowess, or accuracy to the source material. Instead, these rankings are entirely subjective, merely my 5 favorite scenes in the show. These are the moments I rewatch over and over, gleaning from them the same emotions I felt when watching them for the first time. So, what are my top 5 Game of Thrones moments? Let's explore. At number 5 is Jon Snow being chosen as King in the North. Just as he was in the books, Jon Snow in the show was a stoic, duty-bound boy who became a man by circumstance as much as choice. He joined the Night's Watch, betrayed it, and rejoined it, and saw his first love die along the way. All the while, Jon was being both obviously and subliminally built to be the hero of the story, if there ever was to be one. It was Jon who saw the White Walkers, the others, at Hardhome in their vastness. He had both ability and reason to see past the petty squabbles within Castle Black and with the wildlings. For this, he was cleverly elected Lord Commander of the Watch, but was also usurped at the inopportune time. After his dramatic fall, he was of course resurrected on some hope of greater purpose, thus abandoning the Watch, having served his time in his first life. Instead, Jon Snow made for the North, his former home, which had seen his supposed father and his elder brother toppled and discarded in the brutalities of war. He called for truces and oaths of allegiance, and took back Winterfell in a victorious manner, quite in contrast to the conquest of his brother Robb, so it was only fitting when the Lords of the North convinced themselves to dismiss his bastard status in their eyes, and see the Stark blood in his veins. Together, they named Jon Snow King in the North, nearly completing an arc that was the most well-deserved in all Game of Thrones. Taking 4th place on my list of top 5 Game of Thrones moments is the execution of Lord Rickard Karstark by Robb Stark. In the books, this scene was ruthless, but also powerful. Its show adaptation, thankfully, matched it to every degree. With the death of his father Ned, and even before that cataclysmic event, Robb Stark was forced to become a man far beyond his years. Though he took counsel from his mother and trusted advisors as required, the North was his to rule. The War of the Five Kings, his to fight as he saw fit. Of course, in A Song of Ice and Fire, Robb was 14 at the inception of the war, while in Game of Thrones he was aged up, but the sentiment still applies. His life of comfort and potential quickly became one of duty, honor, and justice. So, when his mother Catelyn set free the captive Sir Jaime Lannister in a desperate gamble to see her daughters returned, many of Robb's bannermen dissented. Foremost among them was Lord Rickard Karstark, who carried out his revenge on helpless Lannister prisoners. In yet another test of respect, fortitude, and justice, Robb had a choice to make. Was he to let such insolence go unpunished? No. In the pouring rain, Robb beheaded his former bannerman, emulating his father in full. Though he may have had doubts, and even regrets, he kept them inside. On the outside, Robb displayed only a stoic mask devoted to his duty, and he did not hesitate to do what must be done. For me, it was this moment that truly saw Robb Stark become not just King in the North, but a man in full. Perhaps the most sentimental moment on this list, my 3rd favorite Game of Thrones moment of all time, was the reuniting of Jon Snow with Sansa Stark. Of course, anyone familiar with George R.R. Martin's novels knows that, as of the making of this video, none of the Stark children have been reunited. The entire fanbase longs for this. Even at the time when Game of Thrones was first made, the fans yearned to see Ned Stark's children, any of them, if not all, reunited in some way. And while this still has not happened in the books, Game of Thrones provided the viewers with these moments, the first of which being between Jon and Sansa. True, these two characters were never the closest before all went their separate ways from Winterfell, but in a way, that made it that much more meaningful when they returned to each other's company. Both Jon and Sansa had experienced countless trials and tribulations, cruelty and savagery and ruthlessness and death, that it seemed all comfort, all familiarity in the world, was gone. But, after withholding such a reconciliation for so long, we finally see Jon and Sansa reunited at Castle Black. To the characters, the moment was filled with simple relief to see each other alive. To the viewers, it was a time to finally relax and breathe. After being surrounded by so many sly and unfamiliar faces, characters ready and willing to betray them at any moment, the first two Starks could finally lower their guard, if not but for a moment. The runner-up on this list, my second favorite moment in all Game of Thrones, was Tyrion's speech at his trial in the Red Keep. To me, when Tyrion Lannister declares for a trial by combat to prove his innocence in the murder of King Joffrey, the character is cemented as a legend of the silver screen. Tyrion's book counterpart was just as loquacious, calculated, and relatable. However, Peter Dinklage put his acting ability on full display, far surpassing the very same moment within the pages of A Song of Ice and Fire. With every line, one can see the rage, cynicism, and hurt in Tyrion's face, and the heightened tension of Tywin, played masterfully by Charles Dance, and the stunned reaction of Jaime only added to the weight of the scene. I find myself rewatching this clip over and over, and each time, it sends a shiver down my spine. However, there was only one scene in Game of Thrones that stood out as my complete favorite. This scene was Jon Snow facing down the Bolton forces alone upon the field at the inception of the Battle of the Bastards. The mere fact that this point in the story was only theory in regard to the books, as it had still not yet been put to page, may have provided an advantage. While scenes from the first 4 seasons could all suffer comparisons to the books, the Battle of the Bastards was a creation of Game of Thrones alone, at least to this point. For all the faults of the later seasons, the Battle of the Bastards was a highlight of the entire series. The pinnacle of this fight was Jon Snow's solitary stand. His youngest brother lay dead on the field. His forces scrambled to form ranks behind him. His enemies, overwhelming in number, charged directly at him. Yet Jon did not falter. Instead, he bared his blade and prepared to face death without a second thought once more. While the entire battle was one of the most intense sequences in all Game of Thrones, this initial moment set the tone and solidified Jon Snow as the hero of the story. To display such courage in the shadow of certain defeat was admirable to the utmost degree. Jon knew he would fail to survive the fight. He had allowed Ramsay to mentally drain his resolve, and fell for a deadly ploy. So, Jon cast aside his scabbard, yet stood to accept the consequences of all actions leading him to that point. It was both grandiose and eerie, mythical and gut-wrenching, and it was the single best scene in a series full of unforgettable moments. So, that's all for this video. Leave a comment with your own list, as I would love to see where we agree and disagree. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new here. I'd love to have you. Visit my website, russellawellsauthor.com, for exclusive reviews, fiction, and more, and sign up for my mailing list for free exclusive content. The links for both are in the description below. And, like always, I will see you next time.